morning, everybody, and welcome to the TCPalm editorial board meeting to interview candidates for the Martin County Commission District 1. I'm columnist Gil Smart, and I'm joined today by fellow editorial board member Larry Reisman, columnist and community editor, and reader advisory board member Ben Masando. I'll lead today's questioning and open up to other editorial board members at the end. Kelly Rogers will direct our video coverage, and if we get questions from the audience, the media audience, social media, we might decide to pose one or two at the end of the session. I want to thank our candidates today, Doug Smith and Joe Neeson, for streamlining this process by completing questionnaires ahead of time. Board members have reviewed them. They can be found online at tcpalm.com/elections, along with other stories, videos, and information about the August 18th election. At the conclusion of this interview, the editorial board members will discuss possibly writing an editorial to recommend a candidate in this race. We've got several questions today, and we might end up having more of a casual conversation than a Q&A. Our goal is to be completed in 45 minutes to an hour. And because of our time constraints, I want to ask our candidates to keep their answers concise and please be respectful of others. We shall start with the incumbent, Doug Smith, for the first question, and then we'll go to Joe afterwards. First question, like many local governments around Florida, Martin County faces some major challenges, including but not limited to COVID-19, environmental and water quality issues, fiscal shortfalls, and more. What should be the county's top priority right now, and what would you do to address it if elected?
So thanks for that, and I'm having a little bit of hard time hearing on the audio, Gil. So I don't know if it's on your end, but if you can hear me clearly, I think we are dealing with two issues right now that are top front and center for our local community. One is dealing with COVID and all of the issues that surround dealing with COVID. The county commission has dealt with the mask issue recently. I think that was a significant step forward to protecting the most vulnerable parts of our community, our seniors. And alongside of that, we are still continuing to deal with the fallout of the rain events that we had 3 weeks ago and the flooding issues that we have had down in Hope Sound and around the community. So really right now on our plate, the two most pressing issues are dealing with COVID and certainly dealing with our flooding issues.
Okay. Let's toss it to Joe. Joe, what do you see as the most significant issue Martin County has to face right now?
Well, COVID is obviously the biggest thing on everybody's mind. And first of all, let me say thank you for this opportunity. I don't want to just jump right in without acknowledging that this is a great chance for us to finally be able to communicate. COVID is definitely a big problem. The mask issue has become one of the most divisive things in Martin County in my lifetime. I think that it's been maybe handled improperly, but we'll discuss that more in depth later. And I also think that the number two issue is not so much the flooding in Hope Sound. I mean, that was catastrophic, but it's been flooding all over Martin County for over 20 years. And we're just now realizing that it's a big deal because it did become catastrophic. I think that the big algae bloom that's going on in our waterways that could any minute be released down into our area and start our toxic algae bloom probably supersedes the flooding.
Okay, very good. Let's take a step back here and let's introduce ourselves first. Joe, tell voters, tell people who are watching a little bit about yourself, why you're running for office.
Well, I'm a local. I've been here my whole life. My parents and grandparents are buried at All Saints Cemetery. I was educated in Martin County school systems and Indian River Community College. I have a great passion and love for Martin County. It's my home, always has been and always will be. That's the main reason I'm running. And the other reason I'm running is I've been disappointed with the leadership in the last 20 years in my district. It's nothing personal, but I just don't think that there's a big communication. The people that I talk to have very seldom had any interaction with their commissioner at all. And there's things that people want to know about, they want to address. There's too much secrecy. Things happen behind closed doors. I think it's time to open up the doors, and I think it's time for us to pay attention to what's going on and shine some light on some issues and let the citizens have a chance to ask some questions and be part of the process instead of just victims of whatever the decisions are that are made by the powers that be. I'm looking forward to being able to serve the community. I've been active in this community my whole life. I've worked on the water issues. I've worked with the homeless issues. I've worked with the food pantry. I've worked with Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've done golf tournaments. I've done fishing tournaments. I'm fisherwoman, I'm a surfer, I'm a diver. I'm very representative of the majority of the locals and the residents that are the voters.
Okay, very good. Doug, let's toss it to you. You've been in office for quite some time. Why are you running again? What do you have left to accomplish? Hey, Doug, your mic is muted. If you could unmute it, if that's possible. There you go.
For some reason, it keeps muting. I don't know if you all have that.
Okay, we can at least see it. So.
Okay. So during my term in office, a lot of my focus has been spent on water quality issues, on the environment. Certainly, our CRA program, our community redevelopment areas, our traditional downtowns. Over the years, things have changed. Things have moved relative to what are the important issues of the day. But the big picture issues are what I continually focus on and what I continually work hard on. Over the past 4 years, I think, have been some of the most productive 4 years of my entire term in office. I've had the opportunity to really take some leadership roles through the experience that I've had, both being the Florida Association of Counties president in past years, being on their leadership team, being on their executive board, setting policy for the state that absolutely is directed at Martin County relative to all things water, and in terms of how we improve both the impact that our association and our local government have on the legislature, both and also at the national level in Washington. I also am currently sitting on the board of directors of the National Association of Counties, and that gives me another venue to make sure that our policies here in Martin County and our statewide policies that affect water are reflected in both our Florida Association of Counties policies and our National Association of Counties policies. And you might ask, why is that so important? On the national stage, when we're talking about the Water Resource Development Act, getting that always constantly redone and updated. Martin County has a voice at the table at the national level, both with our lobbyists, but also with our National Association of Counties. When it comes to Everglades restoration and Indian River Lagoon South, which affects us here locally, our policies here locally can get translated through my association of counties, through our efforts in Tallahassee, my efforts in Tallahassee. And we were able to make a huge difference. Those projects are finally starting to come to a point where we're actually over the last years, I think on the Coral Reef program, also on biosolids and septic to sewer have been some of my best work, I think, in my entire term in office. So that's why I want to continue to work. I want to make sure that those projects happen, they get fully implemented, because they all directly impact our water quality and our environment.
Thanks, Doug. I think we're having a few technical difficulties here. I think we heard, hopefully, just cut out for a moment there. I want to start with you. I want to have the next question go to you here, and it has to do with water quality. Once again, this year in Martin County, we're walking on eggshells, hoping there's going to be no discharges from Lake Okeechobee. When are we going to have to stop worrying about that? Obviously, we talk about some progress being made, but here we are again, waiting and wondering, when is that going to end? What can the Martin County Commissioner do to hasten the day when we don't have to worry about that?
And again, I apologize. The audio, for some reason, is incredibly bad. I'm only getting about a third of what you're saying. I think your question was relative to the discharges and how we're doing with Lake Okeechobee. Was that the question?
Yes.
So as we saw on Tuesday, relative to the discharges this year, because of the lake levels and where they have been, the Army Corps has been able to get them to this year. Fortunately, and even with all the rain that we've had this season, we have seen zero discharges coming out of the lake into our estuary, which is a huge bonus for us. Even though our basin has been plagued with the rain, and we've had a significant amount of discharge out of our basin, we haven't seen any discharges out of the lake. The goal of all these projects and all the effort that we've been working on all these years really is to shift those discharges into significant storage areas, and the C44 being one of them. The next big project that I'm working on and focusing on with St. Lucie County is the C23, C24, and 25 projects up there, because everything that we're doing in the C44 basin, if we don't fix the C23, 24, and 25 at the same time, we will still get significant basin discharges out of the North Fork, and it will almost be as if we didn't do any productive with the C44. So the C44 project is nearing completion. That will help us tremendously. The next big push is to get those projects up north done. But that's why I focused so much on biosolids and also on septic tank removal, because they are projects, they are pieces of this puzzle that we can take care of here locally and do a much better job and fix that are contributing to our water quality issues.
Let's toss the question to Joe here. Thanks, Doug. What can the Martin County Commissioner do to help hasten the day when we don't have to worry about discharges anymore?
I'll be happy to answer your question. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to reply to anything that Mr. Smith said because I wasn't able to hear it. I mean, it was completely garbled and it was every fifth word. So I apologize if I'm not completely on subject due to the fact that I really don't know what he said. But as far as what I would do as county commissioner, first of all, I continue to work with Congressman Mask to make sure that we keep the lake level lower going into the wet season. Mr. Smith, I think, just said that we haven't had any discharges the last 2 years. That's a direct result of the fact that we started into the wet season with lower lake levels. Even through the Hurricane Dorian event last year, which was a significant rain event, we still did not have to have any discharges. As a result of that, our seagrass is coming back, our estuaries are healing, and they're going to be able to heal a lot better if we just leave the discharges alone. But as far as what the county commission can do, I think there's a whole lot we can do. First of all, for 20 years, we have known that our water treatment plants were antiquated, and they were 20 years ago too small for the population we had. And yet we keep increasing our population, which increases the load in our water treatment plants. And the biosolid issues, I think it's insane that we take biosolids and we spray them onto fields, whether we're going to be planting food or we're going to be planting people. It's still a bad precedent to set to have that being sprayed on the fields. As we all know, without even just a 6th grade science class, everything ends up in the water. If it doesn't go directly into our lakes, estuaries, rivers, and the ocean, it goes into our drinking water system and our aquifers. Florida's made out of coquino rock and coral and sand. Everything percolates down into our drinking water system, into our underground aquifers. So I think it's important that we get very strong, and we actually, mandate's a strong word these days, that we try to make some ordinances and some rules and enforce them to stop the spraying and especially around our waterways, but throughout. I think we need to start limiting people's ability to use fertilizers. If it was up to me, we'd actually limit people's ability to plant lawns and sod. I think it's counterproductive to being able to have a pristine waterway. So there's a lot of things that I would implement as a county commissioner that should have been implemented all along for the last 20 years. And had we been doing it, we would have been in a lot better position to be able to deal with the coming online of the new reservoir. If we'd been able to be a little bit more diligent in Tallahassee, we wouldn't have gotten so screwed on the SB 10 when at the last minute before it went to the floor for a vote, it stopped in the sugar lobbyist's office and it changed the verbiage. It took out eminent domain. It took out a lot of the enforcement. So now we've got to backtrack and find more land to be able to build our marshes, to be able to make our reservoir work. Governor DeSantis did a great job when he replaced the original South Florida Water Management District Governing Board and gave us some people that are a little bit more active in the community, changing it from the lower schedule to the LOSUM schedule. That all of a sudden we're including health and human safety into our evaluation of this instead of just irrigation, navigation, and recreation. So we're making great strides nationally at the state level, and I think that the county has kind of been slacking on what we should be able to do. I think we can be a lot stronger in being able to provide better answers for these questions.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. We're going to start the next question with you. It has to do with growth. Growth, as everyone knows, is a perpetual issue in Martin County. In your opinion, right now, does Martin County have too much growth, too little growth, or just about the right amount? And if it's too much or too little, what would you do as a commissioner to fix that?
Well, I think mostly what we've got is too stupid growth. I think that we're not planning ahead of what we're going to do with all these people once we get them here. If you've tried to get out to the beaches in the last couple of years on a nice Saturday or Sunday weekend, you know that it can take up to 2 hours to get out there because we just don't have the roads or the infrastructure to be able to move this many people from point A to point B. When the Roosevelt Bridge went down, it was a small hitch in the get along, and I'm very grateful to the leadership and the management that made that come together so quickly. And we're back up and running. But just for the short period of time that we were inconvenienced by that, it was a glaring example of how much traffic we have in two little roads. We've had chronic flooding in Martin County ever since I was a kid, and it's gotten considerably worse as we have more concrete and less wetlands. You know, everybody's all up in arms over Hope Hills, and it's a horrible thing. But for 20 years, we haven't done anything to alleviate the flooding that's been a constant problem down there. And it took a catastrophe, something that put people out of their homes, to be able to come up with an answer to fix it. And now the answer is, let's take some of these people's homes to be able to build a reservoir, and let's depend on state and federal money to do it. This is something that should have been done at the county level for a long, long time. So I think instead of slow growth, fast growth, I think what we need is smart growth. I think we need to have a moratorium on any new building and construction, especially on the coastlines, until we can figure out how we're going to manage it. Right now, we don't have the facilities for water treatment. Our schools are antiquated and they need to be renovated and upgraded, and we need more schools. There's just so many things that we haven't addressed, but we can continue to build, and consequently, here we are. So what are we going to do? Tell people, come down here, spend your life savings to have part of paradise, and once you get here, you're on your own. You figure out how you're going to keep your water clean. You figure out how you're going to get back and forth to the beach. You figure out where your kids are going to go to school and how much quality they're going to have due to the fact that the schools are ridiculously old. I mean, it's just not fair to continue to sell things that we can't back up. I think it's time for us to stop and reconsider, fix our infrastructure, and then talk about how we're going to go forward.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Doug, let's throw this to you. You're muted again. Let's make sure you're not. Okay, there you go.
Yep. Thank you.
If you can hear me, the issue is growth. Do we have too much, too little, just enough? And if it's too much, too little, what do we do about it?
So over my entire term here in office, Martin County, you know, it's interesting. The growth number is always an interesting thing. We have been under 2% growth for my entire term in office over those years. And so right now we're seeing a significant increase in residential housing units in the city of Stewart. But for all intents and purposes, Martin County has very few projects that are happening. We have really done a great job, I think, of managing that growth. We've made sure that our infrastructure is caught up. We have built bridges. We have added lanes to roads. We have improved intersections. We've done the things that were really needed to kind of keep up with that growth. And for many years prior to me coming into office, all of that was set aside by the group that didn't believe that you ought to do any infrastructure whatsoever. So I think we've done a good job. I think we've managed it fairly well. I think what's interesting with the bridge failure that we had over a couple weeks ago is how important that bridge really was to our infrastructure. At the time, if you all recall, for those of you who were here, it was very controversial building that bridge, as a lot of our bridges have been very controversial. But we kept marching forward, and now I think we can see the importance of that infrastructure and how it's played its way out relative to the commute that people from St. Lucie County come through Martin County or work in Martin County. Those diversions of traffic over that week and a half period of time that we had with the bridge being closed, I think really put an explanation point on how important infrastructure really is and how important those bridges are to our daily lives and the ability for residents to be able to commute back and forth. So I think we've done a good job, and I don't see anything dramatically on the horizon that's going to change in any of that. I'd say, you know, some of what the city is doing currently, which is completely in their purview, is addressing housing issues that they felt that they had. But we on the county side have had a very, very slow period of growth. I think the bigger challenge for all of us is understanding what the future looks like coming out of COVID. I think relative to the economy, relative to jobs, I think that is something that we have got to pay a lot of attention to. I proffered the idea at the county commission about funding a team to come in and help us do some really good assessment of where exactly people are, where our business community exactly is. Even though anecdotally we kind of know, I think we need to drill down further into that and really get to understand how deep this has affected us, and then coming out of that, mapping out a plan and mapping out a strategy for how, in fact, we do come out of this. What is our new economy going to look like in Martin County, and how are we going to address it?
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Doug, we'll start with you on the next one, and let's stick with the topic of COVID. COVID-19 has become one of the most significant issues facing any community. Martin County recently passed a mandatory face mask requirement that's generated a lot of controversy. What's your position on the mask mandate? Why is it, or is it not, a necessary or good idea?
Well, I'm sure as hopefully all of your followers know at this point in time, I voted for the mask mandate. And it was a difficult vote. We had probably the most public involvement on any single issue that I've had during my entire term in office participate in this conversation. It's very personal for many people on both sides of the equation. We had over 350 public comments relative to the issue, and it was exactly split right down the middle. I kind of kept track during the course of the day. And the pro-mask was just as well documented as the anti-mask was. But at the end of the day, for me, and this is really how I came down on my decision as to what I thought was right, because I really do feel we're on the edge of messing with people's constitutional rights. However, there's a big however to that. With our most vulnerable population, and they're the most at risk for being involved in this COVID issue, I felt that was the decision to make. Regardless of any other issue, if we didn't take the step as a county commission to make sure that we protect to the greatest extent the health, safety, and welfare of our most vulnerable, then we would have failed our job. The nuance of what we did versus what would have happened on the Friday before on the first vote that was taken was that I did not believe that if we were to have followed the emergency management directives from the state operating under those mandates, that we would have had to have misdemeanors as part of the emergency order that we would have adopted that we did not adopt. And that took a couple days after that Friday to come back and have our attorneys draft an ordinance that was a locally adopted ordinance, which made it just a civil infraction, which is akin to a traffic ticket. I did not believe that as important as this issue is to our community and certainly to our vulnerable population, that it was not right and that we should not issue a misdemeanor fine or ticket to someone that would have had that on their record for life. So I think we made the right decision. We had a unanimous vote of the county commission to do that. I felt very good about the fact that all 5 of us came together and made sure that that was the right decision for our community.
Okay, thanks. Joe, what do you think of the mask ordinance?
Well, I said this at the meeting and I still stand by it. 99% of Martin County residents were wearing masks and being considerate of their fellow man. I mean, that's who we are. We take care of each other. And, you know, when I'm around my senior people that I help take care of, I make sure I wear a mask. I keep my social distancing. I was a nurse for 20 years. I really can't see where the masks are going to be that big of a deal to help us, especially considering we're not educating people on the proper use for them and we're not giving them the proper masks. The other things I was concerned about, and Stacey Hetherington addressed it and added it to the mandate after the fact, is that, you know, we've got people that have been out of work for months. If you got a couple of kids and you're going to properly use your masks, you're going to go through several of those masks a day. And who's going to provide those masks? Who's going to pay for them? Who's going to teach the residents how to use the masks properly? How are we disposing of the masks when they're done? I'm finding them on the beaches, on the ground. I see people have them on hanging on their rearview mirrors, hanging on their elbows, hanging on their purses. I think that the masks is just too many different questions about it. And as far as the mandate, the Board of County Commissioners would have had zero authority to mandate anything had it not been for the state of emergency. And I think if we'd have let Martin Countyans treat each other with respect and work it out and made it the same kind of recommendation that the governor did, we'd have been a lot better off. But instead, this mandate has driven a wedge, a huge wedge, because now to a significant number of the population, it's become a constitutional issue. It used to be just the issue about helping each other out and taking care of our health. And now all of a sudden it's bigger. And it became bigger because of the mandate. And if the state of emergency ends tomorrow, the mandate ends tomorrow. Sheriff Snyder has been known to say to many people, myself included, that he does not really have any way to enforce this, that they're going to go around his officers and they're going to give people masks and they're going to try to educate them where they are, but they have no intention of fining people. And as far as the misdemeanor, that was just ridiculous. That should have never been part of the process at all. And I think the way it was worded and the way it was presented to people was so poorly done that that's why we have such a big schism. And as far as the ordinance itself, paragraph 3 says if you've got an issue with a medical concern that makes it so you don't want to wear a mask, you don't have to. And federal HIPAA law says we really can't ask about what that issue is. So basically, everybody in Martin County just has to tell anybody that asks about a mask, paragraph 3 says that I have a medical issue, I don't have to do it, and I have a medical issue. So I think the thing was poorly managed. I think the leadership was weak. And I think we could have done a significantly better job and not caused all this problem. It's made it significantly worse to deal with each other in a rational way rather than in a compassionate way.
Okay. Next question goes to Joe. We're going to talk finances. Obviously, COVID-19 creates fiscal issues in many communities. What's one way the Martin County Commission could save taxpayer dollars right now?
Well, I'm not sure that the commission's in much of a position to be able to do that. I think that they, I like the fact that we're stopping evictions during all this, but that's not going to do the landlords any good in the long run. They still have to pay their mortgages too. There's so many issues surrounding this. The fact that I work with the food pantry. We have between 450 and 600 families coming through our line every Saturday as a result of this. The fiscal impact is huge. And when Doug Smith said that people from Port St. Lucie come down here over the bridge to go to work in Martin County, that's pretty much not true. What they do is they drive through Martin County to be able to go to Palm Beach to go to work. We don't have a lot of jobs available. And most of the jobs we have available are in the service industry. And the service industry is the industry that's being targeted the most during this COVID and keeping people from going to work. I think we need to let people that have an issue with being afraid, or they have a real physical issue or a medical issue that keeps them in fear and they need to be set aside, those are the people that we should be taking care of in their homes, in their place. And the rest of us should be out going back to work and keeping the economy going. This is going to be devastating for decades to come at the rate we're going. People are going to lose their homes. We're going to go into foreclosures. Right now, it's a buying spree. People from New York and Michigan and New Jersey are coming down here. My real estate friends are going nuts selling property because everybody wants to get out and come down here where we have more freedom and we don't have state income taxes. And so we're just being swamped. I think this has been terribly managed. I don't know exactly how we're going to get over it in the long run, but I think right now we need to slow down and try to take care of people, and we need to have common sense. Let the people that are sick and need to be isolated, and let everybody else go back to work.
Okay, good. Thanks. Doug, given the fiscal pressures, is there any way that Martin County commissioners can curtail spending now?
Yeah, so that's a, whoops, yeah, sorry, to make sure the mic was on. So that's a constant challenge we have. And we have been through this before with the recession 10 years ago. The county commission, myself included, had to make a lot of tough choices as to both our employee base and what we do as services relative to the community. Our administrator and our entire team has done a really good job. We will be heading into a budget cycle here in a couple of weeks. And we will be looking very carefully at where we can cut and where we don't have to spend money today, which we will aggressively do. But at the end of the day, we need to really, I think, fully understand exactly what has happened to our community. Again, anecdotally, we're out all the time and we're out dealing with our retail folks and our restaurant folks, and it is hurting. You can absolutely see in every single restaurant in Martin County that the customer base has dropped significantly. And that's a huge concern. And so the service industry is important to us here in Martin County. So is our tourism industry. And so is our industrial and construction industry. And so we need to get, I think, the best information that we can get to make sure that we develop a plan with the Economic Council and the Business Development Board and all the chambers in Martin County to make sure that as we start heading out and as we do start to see the numbers pull back, and we do see the hospitalizations going down, then I think we can really sort of lay out a strategy about, okay, how can we both together, because it's not our job as local government to create jobs. It's really our job, I think, to make sure that our policies, that our ordinances are reflective of a good, healthy economy, and how we start jobs and how we allow businesses to grow and flourish, and that we make sure that we take impediments out of the way of them so that they can get back to work. But, at the end of the day, the most difficult thing, I think, relative to where we are in Martin County, we are, adjacent to 3 enormous counties to the south. They had mandatory orders throughout March and April. We saw it with our beach closures. We saw it with the tennis issues that we had in golf. It's not just as easy to sit back and say, everybody in Martin County, just go off and do what you want to do. We have to make sure that our policies are in sync with our neighboring counties, because we are the direct recipients as to what occurs as a result of all that. So we have tried to make those policies consistent and work with them. And it has been a painful process for our economy. And I understand that more than anybody does. And so the challenge for all of us is, let's map out a strategy coming out of this and make sure that we are prepared to do everything we can do to get people back to work.
Okay, thanks. Doug, we'll start this one with you.
Sure.
To live in Martin County is to hear the phrase quality of life bandied about quite frequently.
Yeah.
What does quality of life mean to you?
So quality of life starts with water. I think, we could have every conversation could point right back to water quality and the importance of having a clean and healthy river and a clean and healthy estuary, a not dying coral reef tract that we have off of our coast that goes down to Key Biscayne and Miami. Everything in my mind revolves around water quality. When you step away from water quality, the next important thing I think that comes down to quality of life is things that people enjoy. Why do people come to Florida? They want to be outside. They want to be outdoors, enjoying the wonderful weather we have here in Florida. And how do we make sure that experience is as good as it can be for people? So I've spent my entire career doing this, focusing on our parks, focusing on our beaches, making sure that our beaches are in great condition for our residents and our visitors. We have over 73 parks in our park system, which is an enormous piece of real estate to manage and take care of. Over the last 5 or 6 years, we have really kind of coming out of the recession, pumped a whole bunch more money into the management, into the maintenance of our parks programs. We continue to address them. We continue to improve upon them. 2 really fantastic projects that have come online this past year, and one will be coming online towards the fall. One is Fips Park out in Western Palm City. It was an old RV park that was really didn't get a lot of attention paid to it, and we didn't have any great infrastructure. And that really became a passion of mine to focus on that, to make sure that became a revenue positive site for us. It has turned into an absolutely stunning piece of our park inventory. If y'all haven't been out there, I would encourage you to go out and see what we have done. The shoreline all got rebuilt. We've put in docks. We've put in water and sewer. We have fiber optics running throughout the park. It has really become one of our premier sites in Martin County. And the other really big project that has taken years to put together, and we've had issues in the past with county commissions from the past that didn't want to see it happen, but we have committed. I have committed to our golf course community that we would rebuild and address the golf course. I happened to be out there the other day, and it is absolutely stunning, the work that is going on out there. We will have one of the only, if not the only, reversible 9 courses in the state of Florida. We were able to do that by reducing 9 holes to 27. So one week you'll play the 9 holes one direction. The next week you'll come back and play it the opposite direction. It allowed the FAA to have the control of the runway protection zone that they really didn't like having us in their protection zone with the golf course. But it has also allowed us to address a whole bunch of other issues. We partnered with the school board. They helped out by giving us the land in back of the school barn. We built a fantastic stormwater treatment area that is the headwaters in the discharge basin to Willoughby Creek. In the tour the other day, what was the most interesting part for me was that we have tapped into now that reuse water, reclaimed water that we're taking out of the STA, stormwater treatment area, that we've cleaned. It's gone through a series of weirs, and we have tapped into it. It is now being piped into our ponds on the golf course, and they are being used as irrigation water. So it's kind of like an enormous win-win for water. We're taking bad water in the basin, we're cleaning it, we're running it through the system, we're putting it back to the golf course, and we're not using well water to irrigate the golf course anymore. So two really great projects that are coming online this year that have taken probably 10 years to get consensus from both the users and the county commission to make sure that those projects move forward. But we have a good board now that has made sure that those things are going to be committed to, and really look forward to them opening up. And I think those and many of the other park issues lend a lot to the quality of life that people talk about. Schools are super important to parents. I think we have a great school system. And even though this COVID issue has really changed how we all view and understand how school is going to be, I'm very proud of what our school system has done. And the fact that they have rebuilt numerous schools through the years and really put some first-class infrastructure in place for our kids. Jensen Elementary is the next one on the list, which is really exciting for us here in Jensen. Because after I helped get the school board site the new high school in Jensen, which was really one of the first big things I accomplished when I was in office, the next thing was really to address Jensen Beach Elementary, and I'm thrilled that the school board is finally getting to that project, and that'll just be another crown jewel in Jensen relative to our kids. So, that's how I see quality of life. It's important, and jobs clearly is another big part of that issue that we have to stay focused on all the time. Making sure the infrastructure is in place for jobs to be created, making sure that the real estate market is healthy and our economy is healthy, but also making sure that we put jobs in the right place in the first place, and that we encourage economic development to happen where it should versus just haphazardly happening. So we really do target our infrastructure to make sure that the jobs that will be created in the future are in the right place. And we have some really exciting things coming here in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Joe, quality of life, what does it mean?
So quality of life definitely comes down to the water. I do agree with Doug on that. But as far as the beaches, this beach renourishment thing we do is ridiculous, and it's a joke. We used to have beautiful white sand, sugar sand beaches that took care of themselves the way God intended them to. We keep renourishing with sand that's not beach sand. It's never going to be. Every 3 years, no matter what we do, we're going to end up digging it out of the inlet, and we're spending billions of dollars to do it over and over. It becomes a huge hazard because we have these huge cliffs as you try to walk down to the beach. That inhibits our sea turtles from being able to get places. That inhibits our seniors from being able to walk down. The beach renourishment is a disaster. A complete disaster. All of that sand has destroyed Bathtub Beach. It's covered all of our worm reefs. It's smothering everything. It's the worst possible policy that we can ever do. And the golf course. I love to play golf. I grew up playing golf at Martin County Golf Course when I was a kid. I was in the youth golf system there. The golf course is going to be beautiful. I agree. It is so far over budget, and now they're coming back to the table wanting more money to be able to do this. I just think that, again, leadership and management, we always come back after the fact to fix things instead of planning them out and getting it right the first time. And when we're talking about schools, going back to school and giving people the option of you may stay home and go virtual, or you may go back to school. The teachers still have to go back to school because that's the deal. And now they're going to be doing two jobs. They've got to teach the kids in front of them, and then they've got to teach the kids behind the computers. This is not fair to the teachers. They're not going to make any more money doing it. And teachers, as far as the budget, I could not believe that the county commissioners make $77,000 a year plus a paid assistant for a part-time job, when our teachers aren't making nearly that much to come in, and they're the ones that are doing a big job. We do a big job as county commissioners, I'm sure, but I don't think it justifies that salary. And then when you add on to that salary, the fact that there is what is it called? Commissioners, their own fund, discretionary fund, where they're able to take hundreds of thousands of dollars and use it any way they want to without any approval from anybody, without anybody voting on it, without, for the most part, most people knowing about it. Out on the island, I was with the hippie group the other day, the Hutchinson Island Preservation Initiative, and they pay 2 different taxes that go directly to District 1 commissioner's pocket for a discretionary fund. That was used by an organization called the Hutchinson Island Coalition that just decided that a bunch of these guys wanted to get together, call it that, and go to Doug and get some money. They've spent over $660,000, and they've done a couple of little projects that are drainage projects and things like that here and there. But then all of a sudden they just disbanded in 2018. What happened to all the initiative that they had and what they were going to do? What happened to the rest of that money? I think this is ridiculous. We spend too much time doing things in the dark in the Sunshine State. All the money needs to go into the county coffers, and it needs to be decided by all of the commissioners. And if it comes to a quality of life issue, or it comes to an issue that the people that are residents that built Paradise need to know about, we need to let them know about it. It may be cumbersome to include the public in more and more of these debates, but consensus agendas are getting out of hand. Things are just getting done because the county commission decides they want to do it, and nobody that's a citizen that's voting for it, that's paying them to do it, has a voice in it. So our quality of life depends on our ability to be able to be part of the conversation. And I keep hearing 2% growth, 2% growth. Well, that's great. Over 20 years, 2% growth represents almost 1/3 of our current population. What have we done to be able to establish what's going to happen with that? In Jensen Beach right now, they have sold a lot of the wetlands over on Green River Parkway for housing development. We'll never have quality of life if we don't have clean water, and we're never going to have clean water if we have too much concrete and not enough wetlands. I think that we're putting carts before horses over and over and over again. And I think it's time that we have some transparency. If I'm in the county commission, you can bet that any meeting I ever have with anybody that wants to do business with this county will be made public. I will never have a conversation one-on-one with anybody doing county business without having somebody with me or having it recorded. It's time for people to have a say in what's going on instead of just being victims of whatever the county commission decides.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I've got one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the other editorial board members here. I will start this time with Joe. There is actually a third candidate in this race, a young woman by the name of Vincenza Zacco. I guess that's how you say it. She goes by Jamie. She's a graduate of Jensen Beach High School, and that's really all we know about her. She's a write-in, and this would be the second time in a row in this district there's been a sort of mysterious write-in candidate that closes the primary, and to close the primary ultimately winds up being very beneficial for the incumbent. What is going on here, in your opinion, Joe?
Well, in my opinion, and I will hope that Doug will not deny this, his camp does this intentionally. And this isn't the second time, Gil. This is the third time in his 20-year career that this has happened. And I thought I was being clever, holding out to the last minute to be able to file. I was in Vicki Davis's office at 11:47 on June 12th, on Friday, when the deadline was noon. I went outside and shot a 2 or 3 minute video, talked to some people, and left. In that little teeny tiny space of time after that, that's when this girl came in and dropped in. I don't think she has a clue what her being on the ticket means. When Chase Lergio, also from Jensen Beach High School, was the last write-in candidate, we finally did get in touch with him. He never campaigned. He never talked to anybody. But a couple of weeks ago, he contacted a friend of mine and said for a cash amount of money yet to be determined, he would be happy to give me evidence that he was purchased a truck as a result of his ability to get into this race. I think it's ridiculous. It may be legal, but there's a skinny line between legal and ethical, and I think that this is way over the unethical line. Okay.
Doug, what's the deal?
So in Florida state law, write-in candidates are allowed. It is a common thing that happens across our state. People that choose to want to be a write-in candidate are following the law as it's written. And I think it's important that everybody doesn't lose track of the idea that somehow a write-in candidate is not an ethical issue. It's allowed for law, and for those, for whatever reason that they want to do it, and there's a lot of discussion around the state relative to closed primaries. There are those in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party that believe that primaries ought to be closed primaries, as they are with national elections, that Republicans ought to be voting for real Republicans and Democrats ought to be voting for real Democrats. And so there are people that believe in that. And the fact that people take that and use the state law as it's written, I'm completely comfortable with. I mean, I think, a lot of discussion is raised around this issue. But at the end of the day, it's state law. And so I campaign and I run my campaign in accordance with the law. When I file and I get my petitions done, I do it in accordance with the law. I don't wait until the last minute to file. I file at a reasonable time. We collect funds and we fundraise according to the law. And whatever the campaign deals me at the end of the day, and each one of my campaigns has been different. They all have a different twist to them as to who the candidates are, what their backgrounds are, and what we have to deal with in the campaign. That's how I run my campaign. So, I appreciate the idea that people don't like the idea that there are write-in candidates, but they're completely allowed by law.
Okay, that's it for my questions. Larry, we'll go to Larry first, and then Ben, if Ben has any questions. Do you have anything, Larry? Okay. Ben, do you have any questions you'd like to follow up with?
Oh, well, first, thank you both candidates for, am I unmuted? I think I am.
Yes, you
So
are.
I want to say thank you both candidates for and sharing here. As a longtime resident, I grew up here, I went to school here. I've seen both of you all out in the community. One thing that always kind of in my circles comes up about is the future of Martin County and making sure that those who have grown up here and have been a part of the community for so long are able to also find their way here and kind of enjoy their version of the American dream. And that looks very different for different people. But I, as a realtor, I know one thing is housing and the diversity in housing that's available to people, and also our environment, making sure that whatever we're creating is going to be sustainable for our environment. So, and we've kind of danced around those a little bit, but can you talk to some of kind of our younger professionals and some of the people that are wanting to be in Martin County 20 years from now? What do you see Martin County like 20 years from now? And are they a part of it? Joe, you can go first.
Well, I think first of all that our county is not our county commission is not representative of the residents of our county. Our county commission has historically been a bunch of millionaire white people that have been making all the decisions. And Martin County has black people, white people, gay people, old people, young people, people that are into agriculture, people that are not into agriculture. We have a great, wide, diverse community. And we have never had that kind of representation at the county commission level. It's always been the same white millionaires making decisions. They're so completely out of touch with what's going on in our county 95% of the time. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. It's time that we have a new face. It's time that we have representation of more than just that demographic. And I think the term limits ought to be a big discussion going forward. Nobody should be at a county commission level for 20 or 24 years. That's just ridiculous. The way things change, we need to change with them. We need to have new leadership. If I get this job, the first thing I'm going to do is hire somebody that wants to do county commission work in the future to come to work with me as my assistant to be able to learn the system. And in 4 years, I'm going to step away. There's no reason for us to make exorbitant amounts of money as county commissioners and then walk away with that just gravy pension package while people are struggling in Martin County. I think it's time we add diversity into our system. I think that that's going to improve quality of life, and I think that that's going to make people feel more comfortable with the representation. Most people look at our county commission and they don't see themselves at all.
Doug, go ahead.
Thanks, Ben. So I think the way I look at this, Ben, and I think the interesting part about Martin County, the demographics of Martin County are what they are. We are different from our neighboring county to the north. We are certainly different than our neighboring county to the south. And we talk about this a lot. We have this constant conversation that okay, here we are today, and here's what the economy looks like in Martin County. Here's what the job opportunities look like in Martin County. And then you have to start asking that question, well, where are we in 20 years? Where do we want to be in 20 years? And I think relative to the housing, discussion, I think one of the most fascinating things about Knight Kiplinger's project that he has put forward to us in Martin County out west of Palm City, Knight worked with the community. He had hundreds of meetings with community leaders, with individuals, all facets of life in Martin County to understand what they saw for the next 20 to 30 years in Martin County. And I think one of the opportunities that we have with Pineland Prairie moving forward into the future is that it really will start to address an interesting cross mix of housing types, lifestyle issues, the ability for a new community to get built that is not traditionally Martin County. Martin County really has kind of been the way it has been forever. Generations have moved to Martin County. They've raised their children here. Generations have retired here. And it has created the quality of life that we all do love. When I go to lunch in downtown Stuart and see, how Stuart has progressed over the last 30 years and where we have come, the challenge for all of us, I think, is to say, okay, Stuart, Jensen, Salerno, Hope Sound, Indiantown, what does that next 20 years look like? Where are we going to focus our energy and our efforts? And I think one of the answers to that, and one of the key answers to that, has been our CRA program, our Community Redevelopment program. Finally, this year, and I think after many, many years of codes that just didn't work, they weren't properly done, we partnered with the Regional Planning Council to help us really dig deep into our community redevelopment efforts and find out, okay, how can we get this better? How can we really jumpstart this program to make sure that that next 20 years is reflective of where we're going with our planning horizon? And so I think we've accomplished that. We have 5 CRA programs, or 6 rather, that are really well staffed with great residents, have been participating in this process for over 20 years. They have worked diligently with our staff and with our Regional Planning Council folks to really create a framework, a comp plan amendment and codes to go along with them to say, okay, here is the next 20 years coming forward. We are going to focus on those traditional downtowns that make this amazing place we have. We are going to make sure that the infrastructure is done properly. We're going to make sure that the opportunities for everybody to participate are there. The housing types, the commercial types, the mix, if you will, of the different types of commercial we'll find in our redevelopment areas. And I really think that will be the next 20 years for us. The developments of the past that have happened, they've done their thing, and people are happy that live there, and that's fine. But where we really needed to focus a lot of attention and resources to were those older neighborhoods, and they're finally getting the attention I think they've deserved all these years. And so I'm thrilled with where we're at with that, and I'm excited about the future. I think Stuart's future is bright. I think that's important to remember. We work hand in hand with them relative to where they're going with their projects and their ideas. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's an exciting time for us. It's an exciting time to be part of it. Excuse me. And I think we have the right commission in place right now to make sure that continues to move forward into the future.
Okay. I'm going to offer the candidates here an opportunity to sort of wrap up if there's anything that we didn't hit. If there's anything we didn't touch on, if you'd rather keep it rather brief or run a little bit long here. Let's start with the challenger, Joe. Closing statement.
Well, I'd just like to once again thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk. I've been trying to reach out to Doug to see about getting a debate going. I think that the public needs to see these kind of debates. I think going forward, maybe the MCTV might want to consider letting all the candidates debate so that the residents have a real chance to be able to see them and talk to them, but not just see signs all over the place. I think that I have a passion for Martin County, a great love for my home. And I'm very concerned about the future. And I'm sorry that things are just now starting to get going after 20 years in office. It's, you should have been working on this a lot longer, Doug. And you've yet to answer my question if you really did not know anything about the plans for the drop-in, write-in candidates. I think you danced around a lot of issues, and I don't think you answered the question, so the residents want to know. You're a little sketchy with the truth. You're right on the line for legalities, but again, ethics is an important part of leadership. I look forward to being able to continue to work in Martin County like I always have. And come August 19th, win, lose, or draw, I'm going to get up August 19th, roll up my sleeves, and find something that needs to be done in Martin County and go do it. I think I have a chance to offer more in the position as county commissioner, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I hope it works out. I hope you guys support me. Good luck to you, Doug, and I'll look forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail.
Okay, Doug, closing statement.
Thank you, TCPalm. It's been a privilege and honor to serve all these years in Martin County. It really has been an amazing process that I've been able to be part of all these years. I think something that everybody has to always remember, no matter who the candidates are, no matter who is in office, you still have to have 3 votes to get something done. There was a period of time, one cycle ago, or 2 cycles ago rather, where there was a group that set us back, I think, years. And certainly I was in the minority at that point in time. Being back in the majority, if you will, of people that really do care about our community, want to see good things happen, I think has been a great experience. I would say this much relative to experience and relative to my entire term in doing this. It takes a long time to really get yourself to be in a place to where both at the state level and the federal level, you can be effective in getting things done. I really do take pride in the idea that some of these really big issues that affect Martin County, the degradation of the coral reef outside of our inlet has been an absolute catastrophe for us. That is something I have championed. That is something I have led the effort on, getting funding to get monitoring devices out on the reef and in our inlets to make sure that we could go back to the legislature and prove to them what was happening out there was a huge first step. Getting legislation passed 2 years ago to get the coral reef program delineated so that we could then have DEP and other agencies have a direct source of funding to make sure that we can put the adequate funds to the coral reef program that we need to have to make sure that we not only can address the current issues, but also look towards the future to restoring what we have lost out there. This biosolids issue, something that's important to note for those that have listened to the whole discussion today. I was part of the commission probably 18 years ago that voted to ban the spreading of biosolids in Martin County. That's not to say that biosolids still aren't used, but that flagrant use of where trucks would pull up to a field and spray raw sewage out on Western Martin County, we put an end to that almost 18 years ago. But biosolids are still a huge problem. There is great innovative technology out there today that can separate the phosphorus and nitrogen out of and the medical waste out of the biosolids, separate them to products that are sellable and resellable. We can ship the phosphorus out of Florida. We can use the nitrogen because it is what our soils need, and it produces energy and clean water. And so that's a huge effort that I've been working on for the last 3 years. We have made some enormous strides with that. Super, super important. And one of the other big issues was the septic to sewer program that really I've been trying for my entire term in office and have never had enough solid votes on the county commission to come up with a generational change in terms of how we deal with septic tanks and a county-wide in the urban area in unincorporated Martin County, how we deal with septic tanks. And so we do have a 10-year plan in place. We've almost in the first year of its program, we've converted up to almost 1,400 units. Those 10,000 units yet to do, that's over the next 10 years. And that is a dramatically huge increase from septic tank removal in our program that we've had over all these years. So all of those things are things we here locally can do to improve the quality of life and water quality in Martin County. And one other note I would just leave folks with, because things get said during these interviews and people may leave with the wrong impression. The land out there on Jensen Beach Boulevard that is going to be developed is within the city limits, the city of Stewart. They annexed that property almost probably 20 years ago. I was part of the vote that actually took 600 units off the table out there that are now in permanent preservation on Green River Parkway. There was a piece that was not interested in selling at the time and still didn't sell at the time that is up on Jensen Beach Boulevard. But for those that are watching and paying attention, I thought everything in my part to use the sales tax dollars that we had at the time for land acquisition to buy those acres that were going to become condominiums or townhouses on Green River Parkway that will never happen because Martin County did acquire it and restored the wetlands there. So it's been a great term. I appreciate all the support that I've had all these years from the various voters that have supported me and continue to support me. And again, TCPalm, thank you so much for giving us the time to have this conversation with you all via a Zoom or webcast, whatever we're calling it these days. It's certainly a different type of interview than the past elections that we've had in person, but very much appreciate your efforts for making it all happen. Thank you.
Thank you. It is different. We have to roll with the punches here in the media too. So I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank our candidates, Challenger Joe Neeson, incumbent Doug Smith, for their time today, for their answers. A reminder, you folks can go online to tcpalm.com/elections, where you can find the questionnaires that the candidates have filled out with additional responses to additional questions and some more information about them. For those of you who missed the entire broadcast but want to see it, it will be archived on our social media pages. On Facebook, it'll also be on tcpalm.com. We thank everyone again for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Gil.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks very much.